I was never one for surprises. Birthdays? I nodded politely. Christmas? I'd act shocked when I unwrapped a sweater that looked suspiciously like the one I was still wearing from last year. But life, as it turns out, has a twisted sense of humor, and it decided to throw me the biggest surprise of all, right in the middle of aisle 14 of Home Depot. Yep, Home Depot. I was standing there, minding my own business, debating whether I should buy the overpriced smart thermostat that claimed to learn my habits. Spoiler, it would just judge me for setting the heat to tropical levels in winter, when I heard it. Are you sure about this? Because that's not what you said when you were in my bed last weekend. I wouldn't have turned around. I really wouldn't have. But I knew that voice. I knew that voice the way you know a song you hate but still somehow know all the words to. The kind of voice that had once told me she couldn't survive without morning coffee and that parallel parking was a personal attack against her. Sharon. I turned, slow and casual, like I wasn't suddenly experiencing a full-body existential crisis. And there she was, standing between the paint samples and the power tools, looking way too put together for a Saturday morning. She had that effortlessly perfect look, like one of those magazine women who pretend to casually laugh at salads. But I wasn't focused on her. I was focused on him. A man. Tall. Hair gelled back in a way that screamed, I drive a car that costs more than your house. He had that permanent smirk of someone who thought valet parking was a birthright. And there he was, looking down at my wife, oh wait, our wife, apparently with an expression that suggested she was currently failing some sort of secret test. Now, I wasn't the jealous type. If Sharon ever got hit on at a bar, I didn't puff up my chest or do that whole overprotective routine. But this was different. This was very different. So naturally, I did what any self-respecting husband would do. I picked up a random can of paint, eggshell whisper, in case you're wondering, and walked straight over, as if I just happened to be doing some casual Saturday shopping in the exact same spot where my wife was apparently conducting whatever this was. Oh wow, I said, my voice dripping with fake enthusiasm. Fancy running into you here. And with company. Who's your friend, Sharon? Sharon turned so fast I thought she might dislocate something. Jason. Her voice had the exact tone of someone who just got caught stealing a cookie but was trying to convince you it was actually for a starving orphan. And then he spoke. You must be Jason, he said, sticking out a perfectly manicured hand, the kind that had clearly never touched anything heavier than a golf club. I've heard so much about you. Ah, that line. I shook his hand because I was raised right, but I squeezed just hard enough to make it clear I wasn't in the mood for his nonsense. Funny, I said. I can't say the same about you. Now, let me tell you, there are moments in a man's life when he realizes he's been a fool. When you accidentally throw your keys in the trash instead of the wrapper. When you wave back at someone only to realize they were waving at the person behind you. And then there's the moment when your wife of 7 years looks at you with the same expression one gives a weather forecast that just ruined their weekend plans. Because it hit me, right then and there. I was the ruined weekend plans. The man, whose name I was absolutely not going to ask for, laughed. Actually laughed, like this was all some big joke. Oh, he's got jokes, he said, nudging Sharon as if they were sharing some inside moment at my expense. Now, I may not be a violent guy, but I'll tell you what, if I were a different person, that nudge alone would have gotten me put on a government watch list. But instead, I smiled. Because the thing is, Sharon had this look. Not the usual one, the Jason, did you forget to take the laundry out of the dryer again look. No, this was the look of a woman who just realized her plan had taken a nosedive straight into the pavement. Because I wasn't yelling. I wasn't accusing. I wasn't making a scene. I was just smiling. So, I said, tilting my head, what are we shopping for today? Something for our home? Or do we need to furnish a new one? Sharon's mouth opened and closed like a fish that just realized it was no longer in the water. Oh, she finally managed. This is a coworker? I cut in, nodding seriously. Wow, they really have some interesting team-building exercises at your job. That's great. Really great. The guy who I was now mentally referring to as Chad chuckled again. I was really beginning to hate that chuckle. Listen, man, no need for dramatics. Oh, no, I said, waving a hand. No dramatics at all. I'm genuinely fascinated. Please, do continue. Because I'd love to know how Sharon managed to have so many late-night strategy meetings without ever bringing home a single report. There it was. The flicker. The oh no, Jason actually knows something flicker. And suddenly, I wasn't the fool anymore. Chad's smirk faded. Sharon's face went pale. And I just stood there, still holding my stupid can of eggshell whisper, enjoying the absolute chaos of the moment. Because whatever they had been planning, it was clear they hadn't planned for this. The thing about catching your wife in the middle of what I can only assume was an unofficial job interview for a new husband is that it changes your whole afternoon. One minute, you're weighing the pros and cons of a smart thermostat, and the next, you're in a free reality show you never signed up for, starring your wife, some guy who probably spends too much time perfecting his casual but wealthy hair, and you. The guy who's apparently been kept in the dark long enough to develop night vision. And what did I do? Nothing. I just kept standing there, holding that stupid can of paint like it was some kind of emotional support object, watching Sharon try to come up with a script for a scene she wasn't expecting. She finally cleared her throat. Jason, Yeah, I'd love to hear how this explanation goes, I said, gesturing between the two of them. Let me guess, this is all a huge misunderstanding? A hilarious coincidence? Maybe a social experiment? Sharon looked at me like she was trying to decide whether to go with honesty or some last-ditch effort to gaslight me into thinking I'd imagined everything. Meanwhile, Chad, or whatever his actual name was, had the audacity to still look relaxed. Listen, man, I don't think this is the place. Oh, I love this place, I cut in. Bright lighting, friendly staff, endless aisles of home improvement possibilities. Honestly, this might be the perfect place to have a nice, public conversation about what exactly is going on here. Sharon's eyes darted around like she was searching for an exit. Chad exhaled dramatically, like this whole thing was inconvenient for him. I'm just gonna be upfront with you, he said, straightening his perfectly rolled-up sleeves. We're adults, right? Let's be mature about this. I blinked. Mature? Yeah, he said, nodding like he was making some profound point. Things happen, people change, relationships evolve. Uh-huh, I said. And did my wife let me know that our relationship was evolving? Or was that just something you two worked out privately in between? I don't know. Hotel reservations? That got a reaction. Sharon winced. Chad tilted his head, as if weighing his options. Listen, Jason. Oh. No, please, I said. By all means, enlighten me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife and some guy who probably makes inspirational LinkedIn posts about grinding for success have been very busy behind my back. Sharon finally found her voice. Jason, can we not do this here? Sure, I said. Let's pick a better location. Maybe the garage, where I can hand you a box and help you pack. Oh, or how about our living room, where we can sit down and have a nice mature conversation about how long I've been the side character in my own marriage. She sighed, rubbing her temples like I was the one giving her a headache. Chad, who clearly thought he was the main character in all situations, took another step forward. Look, man, I get it. This is a shock. But honestly, you should have seen it coming. Oh, that was rich. I let out a low whistle. Wow. Okay. That's bold. That's a bold thing to say to a man who literally just found out his wife has been, let's say, diversifying her assets. Sharon muttered my name like she was warning me not to make a scene. Oh, now you don't want a scene, I said, shaking my head. Fascinating. Really? I'd love to hear more about the boundaries you suddenly care about. Maybe right after we cover the part where I figure out how long my marriage has been under renovation without my consent. Chad, who was still somehow standing there, calm as a guy waiting for his car at a valet's side. This isn't personal, man. I stared at him. Then I looked at Sharon. Then back at Chad. I waited. Surely, my wife, the woman who once cried over a missing Tupperware lid, was about to step in and tell this guy that, yes, in fact, it was personal. But she didn't. And that's when I realized something. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some random moment of poor judgment she regretted. This wasn't even a situation where she was just caught off guard. No, Sharon had been ready for this moment. Just not the part where I handled it this well. I inhaled sharply and ran a hand through my hair. You know what? I said. I think I need a card. Sharon blinked. What? A card, I repeated. For all the insight I'm getting today. Because wow, this is a lot. Like, I walked in here thinking I was just going to buy some paint and maybe a wrench I don't actually need. And instead, I got a free masterclass in betrayal. Sharon groaned. Jason, stop. Oh, no, don't worry, I said. I'm stopping. Stopping this conversation. Stopping my marriage. Stopping whatever weird alternative reality I apparently slipped into where I'm supposed to politely accept that my wife has been networking in places that have absolutely nothing to do with her job. And with that, I did what any self-respecting man would do. I took my can of eggshell whisper and walked directly to self-checkout. Because unlike some people, I finish what I start. The thing about checking out of Home Depot while still mentally processing that your wife has been treating your marriage like a free trial she forgot to cancel is that it really tests your ability to act normal. Self-checkout was supposed to be my escape route, quick, efficient, requiring minimal human interaction. But of course, that was too much to ask for. Hey, bud, you find everything okay today? The cashier manning the self-checkout had apparently decided today was the day he was going to break protocol and actually engage with customers. I stared at him. Well, I said, scanning the can of eggshell whisper, I came in for paint, and I'm leaving with existential dread, so mixed results. He nodded slowly, clearly unsure if I was joking or on the verge of a full-blown breakdown. Anything else I can help you with? Not unless you've got a time machine back there, I said, inserting my card and waiting for it to process. Or maybe a guidebook on how to process the fact that my wife has been very committed to customer loyalty with some guy who looks like he drinks imported water. The cashier blinked. Oh, no, man. We don't sell those. Figures, I muttered, grabbing my receipt. And just like that, I walked out of Home Depot with a can of paint and the kind of clarity you don't ask for but get anyway. Now, there were a lot of ways I could have handled the rest of my day. Some men would storm home, demand answers, maybe even yell. Some would go full detective mode, start pulling up phone records, tracking down hotel receipts, making spreadsheets. Me? I went home and did the most logical thing I could think of. I started painting the guest room. Not because I particularly cared about the guest room. Not because I had a sudden burst of motivation to tackle home improvement projects. But because, for whatever reason, rolling fresh paint over a wall felt like the only thing I had control over in that moment. Plus, I had already bought the paint, and I wasn't about to let that $45 go to waste just because my marriage had entered its limited time-only phase. Halfway through the first wall, I heard the front door open. Jason. Sharon's voice rang out, hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she should be greeting me like a husband or an obstacle. I didn't answer right away, just kept painting. She appeared in the doorway a few seconds later, her eyes scanning the half-painted wall like she had walked into some kind of crime scene. What are you doing? I dipped the roller back into the tray. Oh, just freshening things up. You know, making improvements. Unlike some people in this house, I believe in putting effort into things. Sharon exhaled, already exhausted. Jason, can we talk? Sure, I said, rolling another stroke of paint onto the wall. By all means, let's talk about how I ran into my loving wife at Home Depot having a conversation that, from what I gathered, had very little to do with power tools. She crossed her arms. You're making a bigger deal out of this than it is. I set the roller down. Oh, am I? Please, enlighten me, Sharon. What exactly did I misunderstand when I heard your friend, who, by the way, has the most punchable face I've ever seen, remind you of your extracurricular activities? Her jaw clenched. It's not what you think. Well, I said. That's a bold strategy. I'm curious to see how you're going to make I slept with another man sound like anything other than exactly what it is. She groaned. Jason, you're being dramatic. Dramatic? I laughed. No, see, you're the dramatic one. You turned our marriage into a live-action soap opera. I'm just the guy who accidentally tuned in at the wrong moment. She sighed. Look, I was going to tell you. I scoffed. Oh, yeah? When? During dinner? Maybe while we were watching TV. Hey honey, pass the remote. Also, fun fact, I've been auditioning for new husbands in my spare time. Can you just? I held up a hand. No, really. I'd love to hear the timeline on this. At what point in the betrayal process were you planning to let me in on the fact that I was playing the role of unknowing husband number one? She didn't answer right away. And that was exactly my problem. Because there was no good answer. There was no way to spin this. No way to make it make sense. I grabbed the roller again, turning back to the wall. You know what? Doesn't matter. I get it now. Some people repaint walls. Others repaint their relationships. We all have our projects, right? Jason. I rolled another stroke of paint. Doors that way, Sharon. If you want to keep lying, go do it somewhere else. She hesitated. And for a second, I thought she might actually try to argue. Try to fight. But she didn't. She turned. Walked out. And I just kept painting. The thing about being cheated on is that everyone reacts like you've just been diagnosed with some rare, life-threatening disease. I didn't exactly send out a newsletter, But word got around fast. Because of course it did. Someone saw something, someone else whispered something, and before I knew it, I was getting text messages with way too many exclamation points and unwanted sympathy from people who, quite frankly, had never cared this much about my personal life before. First up was my sister, Emily, who had never been a fan of Sharon and had been waiting for this moment like a vulture with a personal grudge. Emily, heard about Sharon. Are you okay? Also, do I get to say, I told you so yet, or should I wait? I ignored that one. I wasn't in the mood for victory laps, even if she had warned me 7 years ago that Sharon had the personality of a customer service rep who secretly hated every single person she had to help. Then came Mark, my best friend since high school, who never knew how to be serious about anything. Mark, bro, do I need to slash some tires? Wait, no. That's illegal. Do I need to strongly deflate some tires? Me, no, but I appreciate the enthusiasm. Mark, can I at least go into his business and aggressively take all the free samples? Me, what business? Mark, oh, you don't know? That's when I learned that Chad, or whatever his real name was, owned a gym. Of course he did. That explained everything. The smug attitude. The overconfidence. The way he spoke like a guy who thought reading one self-help book made him a philosopher. I could already picture it. A high-end gym with some life-changing slogan, where people paid way too much money to be yelled at while doing push-ups. He was probably the kind of guy who called himself a fitness entrepreneur and made Instagram posts about grinding harder than your excuses. Fantastic. I didn't need details, but Mark, because he's Mark, decided I did. Mark, yeah, dude. It's called Titan Performance. You know the type. Black walls, loud music, lots of unnecessary yelling. Me. So basically, a nightclub where people voluntarily lift heavy things? Mark, exactly. Also, I checked their website. They have a values section. Want to guess the first word? Me, integrity. Mark, integrity. Me, beautiful. That should have been the end of it. I had all the information I needed. My wife had traded me in for a guy who probably referred to himself as an alpha, unironically. But then, Mark sent another message. Mark, not saying you should go check it out, but I am saying that their free trial class is tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And that's how I found myself standing outside Titan Performance at 7:55 a.m., wearing the most mismatched workout clothes I could find. I wasn't there for revenge. I wasn't there to fight. I wasn't even there to confront anything. I was there because I had absolutely nothing better to do, and sometimes, when your life has gone completely off the rails, the only logical response is to walk straight into the chaos and see what happens. The front desk girl was exactly who you'd expect to work at a place like this. High ponytail, aggressively upbeat, the kind of person who probably drank smoothies made out of things that should never be blended together. First time here, she chirped. Oh yeah, I said, giving her my best excited to be here smile. I just love gyms. So much sweating. So much grunting. It's really beautiful. She blinked, not sure if I was being serious, then handed me a waiver. You're going to love this class. It's run by our owner, Chad. I bet it was. I signed the waiver, walked into the main area, and waited. And then, right on schedule, Chad appeared, wearing a shirt that was at least 2 sizes too small. All right, listen up, he called out, clapping his hands together. This isn't just a workout. This is a lifestyle. You didn't come here to be average. You came here to push past your limits. I bit my tongue. Oh, buddy, you have no idea how many limits I've been pushed past recently. He scanned the group, his eyes passing right over me, because why would he recognize me? In his mind, I was probably just some faceless, irrelevant obstacle from Sharon's past. Which made it even better when, halfway through class, he finally did. We were mid-circuit. He was yelling at some poor guy to unleash his inner warrior when his gaze finally landed on me, and I saw the exact moment recognition kicked in. His face barely changed, but his posture did. A slight hesitation, a flicker of why is this guy here before he recovered and kept going like nothing had happened. Impressive. Most people would panic. Most people would stutter. But no, not Chad. Chad had self-discipline. So I smiled. A big, friendly, nothing's wrong here smile. How are we feeling, Jason? He asked, his voice just a little tighter than before. Oh man, amazing, I said. Really feeling the burn. Might even sign up for a membership. You guys have great values. His jaw twitched. Yeah, we do. We held eye contact for just a second too long. And that's when I knew this wasn't going to be the last time we saw each other. The great thing about pretending to care about fitness for the sake of psychological warfare is that people just assume you're on some kind of self-improvement journey. I didn't correct them. By the time I finished my third free class at Titan Performance, I had fully committed to the bit. I was showing up early, stretching like a man who had actual goals, nodding along as Chad rambled about mental toughness and unlocking potential. I even asked questions. "Oh, Chad, quick one for you," I said after class one day. "Is there a protein powder that specifically helps with moral integrity, or is that more of a lifestyle choice?" He didn't react, but I knew he heard me. It was beautiful. Sharon, of course, had found out. That part was inevitable. "Jason, what are you doing?" she had demanded over the phone. "Taking control of my health," I said, sipping a soda just to make a point. "You always said I should be more active. You joined his gym." "Whoa, his gym? I don't think that's how business ownership works. Are you saying you personally vetted all the members?" "That's so hands-on of you, Sharon. You know exactly what you're doing," she snapped. "Yeah, getting in great shape," I said. "I mean, I can already feel the difference. The betrayal endurance workouts are killer. Highly recommend." She hung up on me. Anyway, things were going well. Then one afternoon, Chad pulled me aside after class. "You're not serious about this, are you?" he asked, keeping his voice level. "About fitness?" I said. "Chad, I'm deeply serious about fitness. I mean, have you read your mission statement? Life-changing stuff." He inhaled slowly, like he was debating whether it was worth it to lose his temper in a room full of clients who were still recovering from too many lunges. "Listen, man," he said, keeping his hands on his hips like he was about to deliver a motivational speech. "I get it. You're upset. You're hurt. But at some point, you've got to move on." I nodded. "You know, you're absolutely right. But real quick, I do have a question." He waited. "What's it like, running a business built on values while simultaneously treating other people's marriages like a clearance sale?" There it was. The twitch. The little flicker of irritation behind his eyes. I continued before he could respond. "Like, do you ever stop and think, wow, I really inspire people at 8 a.m., then immediately ruin their evenings?" He exhaled sharply through his nose. "Jason." "No, really," I said, holding up a hand. "This is a rare opportunity. I've never had the chance to ask a professional homewrecker how they balance work and personal life." He clenched his jaw. And I smiled. "See you next class, Chad." You can learn a lot about a man by watching how he reacts when his world starts crumbling around him. Chad had been holding it together pretty well. I had to give him that. Some guys, when confronted with their own ridiculousness, go straight into defensive mode. But not Chad. No, he had stayed calm, played it cool, acted like none of this bothered him. Like he was just above it all. That lasted right up until the moment his employees started asking questions. "Hey, Chad," one of the trainers whispered to him after class. "That new guy? Jason? Is it true he's your, girlfriend's husband?" Chad clenched his jaw so hard I thought he might snap a tooth. "No," he said. "Not anymore." It was a nice attempt. Really? The problem was that the gym staff had already pieced things together. Because when you run a business that thrives on community and trust, people tend to notice when their fearless leader has been less than honest about his extracurricular activities. But Chad still had one card left to play. He pulled me aside before I could leave and went straight into his last-ditch effort, the appeal to brotherhood. "Look, Jason," he said, exhaling like this was hard for him. "I didn't plan for any of this to happen, all right? Things just developed. But I get it. You're angry. You want to make your point. Fine. You made it. Now let it go." I nodded, pretending to consider it. "Yeah, I hear you. That's a great idea." His shoulders relaxed slightly. "I just have one small request," I added. His eye twitched. "What?" I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice like I was about to share something serious. "I just want to be there when you finally realize Sharon's gonna do the exact same thing to you." There it was. The moment of real, actual doubt flashing across his face. The part of his brain that had been so sure he won starting to reconsider. I let that sink in before clapping him on the shoulder. "See you around, Chad." That was the last time I ever set foot in Titan Performance. And as for Sharon? Well, she did what Sharon does best, avoided responsibility until it became impossible. About a week later, she showed up at the house, acting like we could still have a civilized conversation. "Jason," she started, all careful and controlled, "I think we need to talk about." I cut her off. "Oh, absolutely. Let's talk." Let's talk about how you're still standing in our house like you belong here. She frowned. I do belong here. I shook my head. No. See, I belong here. You belong in whatever disaster you just signed yourself up for. Her jaw tightened, and for a brief second, I saw the flicker of regret she was trying so hard to suppress. She had expected more from this. More from Chad. More from whatever fantasy she had built up in her head. But reality has a funny way of ruining people's best-laid plans. And the truth was, she hadn't upgraded. She hadn't found something better. She had just thrown everything away for a guy who thought, Grind said, was a personality. I didn't mean for things to end up like this, she finally said. I laughed. Of course, you didn't. You thought you'd get away with it. That's different. She stared at me, probably expecting me to yell, to cry, to fight for her. But there was nothing left to fight for. So I walked past her, grabbed the one thing I actually cared about, my keys, and opened the front door. You're not staying here, I said simply. Pack your stuff and get out. She hesitated. But she knew. This was it. No yelling. No arguments. No second chances. Just the end. And you know what? It felt great. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel